Yes.
You're a guest.
I'm a
It's good
guest.
to see you again.
It feels very nice. I have missed the whole process. Hi, Stan. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Do your masks protect against coronavirus?
Or smoke.
What I realized is usually we see the back of everyone's heads, not the front when we're singing.
And gross.
Hello,
Are you rejoining the chorus?
No, I would
Whenever
love
we
to,
get
but
together?
I lost my place when I moved to Colorado, but I'm back now. So I'm here for this, at least.
Yes, that's how I feel.
Welcome.
Beautiful.
Ambrose in the upper left.
I've been singing with the women's chorus.
You've been singing with whom?
In the women's chorus with Debbie.
Oh, great. Yeah. And how is it singing? Well, I know it will be great singing with Debbie, but are you having a good time?
Well, I'm doing this instead now, but yes, I did have a good time. But it's not quite the same.
Denise is signed on with one of her beautiful stained glass.
Hi, Johanna.
Hi, Emmy.
Somebody's letting us hear the news in the background.
Well, that's right. 6:30 to 7 is social time. I forgot.
Oh.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to BCCO for the fall semester. It's great to see so many faces. We have 7 screens worth of faces. That's absolutely fantastic. So I am really excited to see all of your faces. Bizarrely, I just had my first concert. First concert in about 6 months. And it was indoors, but with masks and only 20 minutes at a time. And then we would clear the stage, give the air time to space out, and then come back. But it was a really bizarre experience, and it felt like everybody was rusty. Even me, just waving my arms, as much as that can be rusty. But it was really, really nice, and I was really looking forward to that weekend, as well as the fact that on Monday, we were going to be back in rehearsal for the normal part of our fall season. And so, as you know, we're still in COVID time, so we're still separated from each other. But we're hoping that we've spent a long time actually with the board trying to figure out, how to really continue to build community through these sessions. And we're really excited because I think we're trying to be really creative about how we approach the repertoire, how we approach singing, and how we approach, actually some of the wonderful things that we can do online. And so today we're going to be focusing on the foray repertoire. And of course, just try to keep yourselves on mute for now at least. But what we're going to do is I'm going to do a little presentation about what the semester is going to look like a little bit. And then, Christian, am I on host? Am I allowed to? Oh, I am. Okay,
yes.
Great.
Yes.
And so I want to say welcome to BCCO, of course. This is what it was like in the past, and it will be again in the future. And so this is sort of an overview of the Foray Requiem, which we're going to be focusing on this semester. And for those of you who are new, or those of you who are friends guesting in, or those of you who just want to see everybody's faces again, I want to go through a little bit about what BCCO is about, of course, how the rehearsals are going to change, what the repertoire is like we normally do at the beginning of every semester, sort of a dive into what the repertoire is and what makes it special. What is the essence of that piece of repertoire? It's not just the notes, not just the rhythms, not just the pronunciations, but it really is everything combined to create some sort of affect, to create some sort of style of the music that is important. And so, as you know, let me just see. BCCO, we have a team of people, not only the board, which is a working board, and so I'm sure some of them will be talking later on, and introducing themselves. But for the artistic side, that's me in the upper left. If you can't see my apparently red face because I'm backlit at this point. But Julia Morris is our assistant conductor, who is either deferring year or sort of taking it semester by semester for grad school. And so we're lucky, actually, with COVID to have her come back, especially because she's such a strong artistic force. And to have her continue for this would be is actually her third year now, is actually wonderful. And then Paul Kakamo is our accompanist, and you'll see him in sectionals and doing some sing-alongs sometimes, and is a fantastic pianist, and is absolutely wonderful. But part of the changes for this semester, because we can actually connect with people all around the world, is that we have guest artists. For instance, you might recognize the lower right face is Jennifer Paulino, who's in and out of Colorado, but because even though she's traveling, she's worked with us before, and she can continue to work with us. And then the other guy that's down there is a wonderful pianist, Ronnie Greenberg, who actually works with San Francisco Opera, who's in Canada, and we're going to have some singers from all around the world actually talking about French vocalization and French repertoire, even playing some of the, and playing and performing for us too. And so it really is going to be a dive into what French lyricism is. And so I want to say hi, everybody. And then, okay, so in the terms of the rehearsals, you know that normally in rehearsals we have warm-ups. We also have, we work on the repertoire. And sometimes we have these informational sessions like I'm doing now. We have some sectionals too. But what we're going to be doing actually is a little bit different, because normally the process would be a lot of working on the repertoire in a way where I hear, or Julia hears, whoever's on the podium hears what's going on, and then works on the repertoire in a way to adjust what we hear, right? And so we respond to what we hear, but we can't do that in this new world. And so what we're going to be doing is actually structuring the rehearsals to really just establish some techniques and ensemble techniques that we can all do individually to sort of get at the essence of what this repertoire is about. And so it's going to be actually a very different way of doing it, a little bit more prescribed, but it's going to be actually a little bit more engaging than rather just play a note, sing the note, play a melody, sing the melody, etc. It's actually going to be working on some techniques to instill some of the musical aspects that we're talking about. So when we say context, it's actually both the musical context, but also the context of the piece. And so we thought it might be fun, because we have the opportunity to sing along with the recordings and whatnot, to actually sing through some other repertoire besides the Fauré Requiem, sing through some other choral pieces of Fauré, sing through some French repertoire of different composers that is very similar. Ravel was a student of Fauré's, and so, some of Ravel's choral works, or singing about Debussy, or Massenet, or Saint-Saëns, singing through some other repertoire to get a different feel for it, what the environment was like at the time. And then, of course, we have guest artists from all over the place, like I mentioned, Ronnie Greenberg, or people from the Met Opera, or San Francisco Opera, to really talk about what it means to sing in French. What is the style of French at the time? How does that affect the music? And how does it affect our knowledge of the music when we sing it as performers? Because when you have San Francisco Symphony perform a French symphony, like by Saint-Saëns, they'll perform very differently than Bach, instantly and intuitively, because of the training that they had. And so the same thing for us. As choral singers, as that have sung through a lot of different repertoire, the more repertoire you sing through, the more context you can put these pieces in, and it gives a richer experience when you go through. What is the difference between Verdi's Requiem and Fauré Requiem? One's bombastic, the other is unknown yet. Like maybe you've sung Fauré Requiem, but really, if you were to say instantly, what are the three stylistic traits of Fauré, right? Or you can say Verdi, right? Verdi is dramatic, he's over the top, operatic, right? But for Fauré, what are those characteristics? What are those things that you would instantly, the San Francisco Symphony musicians, how would you change the way that you approach singing the work? So that's a little bit how we're structuring rehearsals, both in the content of the rehearsals, but also the supplemental experiences that we're going to be having through the semester, to really have a full, rich experience, even if we're separated. So Fauré. Fauré is one of my favorite composers because he has the best mustache in the world. I think that the mustache just kind of came back, facial hair came back a little bit. It became a thing for a little bit, but he was a fantastic, fantastic musician. And then if you see, this is a wonderful quote of his: "For me, art, especially music, exists to elevate us as far as possible above everyday existence." And so, obviously that's a different take than some people. Some people want to emphasize the experience. Like Gershwin wants to emphasize everyday experience. He wants to focus on what happens on the street. That's what makes Gershwin special. But Fauré, there's something ethereal about music that he wants to tap into. And so he's known for a lot of different things: French lyricism, as an educator, as an organist. And of course, we're going to look at some of his compositions before really diving into the rehearsal. So in terms of French lyricism, obviously when you think of French repertoire, you think of Debussy and Ravel, but Debussy and Ravel were the next generation. And so, but Fauré, with still the emotional restraint, avoiding excess, it has elegance and refinement. That really describes Fauré. A lot of Debussy and Ravel. They can be quite exciting too, but Debussy and Ravel were really known for impressionism, whereas Fauré was much more a lyricist. His melodies were gorgeous, and we're going to be talking about that. And then musicians oftentimes talk about this idea of the Germanic school versus the French school. And the Germanic school was, at the time, Wagner. Wagner was a huge excess of all things, and the French school, again, was Debussy and Ravel, something more elegant, impressionistic, less direct, more ethereal is really my word for it. I want to actually play a little bit of a piece, actually, that sorry, my point is, at the time, Fauré was actually enamored with Wagner. He thought he was a fantastic musician. But unlike a lot of composers that were influenced by Wagner, he didn't take up the musical characteristics of Wagner. He didn't take on the grandiose, over-the-top experience. His out-of-body experience wanted to be ethereal and light, whereas Wagner's wanted to be all-encompassing. And so, composers at the time, like Saint-Saëns, who is, is obviously a fantastic French composer, but actually composed in a very aggressive manner sometimes, came from both sides. So I actually wanted to play a piece by, actually, you know what? I could have done this without the video. No, I think I'm going to do this with the video because it's fun, because it's a great piece. But this is a piece by Saint-Saëns. Just a little bit, the end. It's called this Danse Bacchanale, and this is from Samson and Delilah. And Samson and Delilah, of course, as you know, Samson with long locks and amazing hair, and the Philistines captured him because Delilah tempted him and cut off his hair in the middle of the night. And so this Danse Bacchanale is actually the Philistines' party. Well, unbeknownst to them, Samson's hair started growing back a little bit as he's been chained to the columns, and he tears down the columns and kills everybody. It's very much an Old Testament story. But this Danse Bacchanale is that moment where everybody is going insane. And I'm only going to play the last minute. We're not going to do very much of this, but I thought it'd be really fun to listen to a bombastic French composition before we get to the ethereal side. And this is a contemporary. Saint-Saëns actually taught Fauré. And so this is a time. So I think I'm sharing right now. And this is the last moment when you can hear the elephants come out. I should warn you. I should warn you that. That the sound might be quite loud. Actually, this is a good point. Let me just make sure. Hold on, just a second. I want to make sure that the sound for this is correct.
So I mean, that's each time before you hit the share button. Actually, it's at the bottom of that window.
Okay. So, but as you can see, if that was a piece that somebody said it was by Fauré, nobody would believe it because Fauré did not write like that. The French, if you said Debussy has some grandiose moments, but never something so excessively exuberant, right? In fact, the French style, in terms of oops, not the desktop, the French style, it goes to performance as well. So I remember a performance where Charles de Troyes, the French conductor, came to work with, I think it was Pittsburgh Symphony at the time. And it was actually a Germanic piece, but there was the chord that went boom, right? And he said, that's just too vulgar. It needs to be boom. It needs to have some elegance to it. But, Fauré really has this lyricism that's a characteristic of his music. And he actually founded a society Société Nationale de Musique with, Saint-Saëns, Bizet, Chapré, Franck, and Massenet. And in fact, there was another society that's created for the next generation with, Debussy and Ravel and whatnot. But he was really iconic in trying to preserve sort of French identity to music. That's very different than Germanic. And so, so that's lyricism. I alluded to some of this stuff. He was a student of Camille Saint-Saëns. He was actually the director of the Paris Conservatoire for a long time. And at the time, something very rare, at the Légion d'honneur, he received the highest honor for the Legion of Honor in France. And that was typically at the time, remember that it was started by Napoleon, and it was typically for military or great political, and he was one of the first, musicians, artists, to be given the Grand Croix, the Great Cross, Grand Cross, I don't know what the translation is, but the Grand Croix of the Légion d'honneur. And it was a symbol of the fact that many people considered him the greatest French composer of his day. And he was the teacher of Maurice Ravel. I think some of you in some of the sessions during the summer or before that, we talked about this fact that Ravel was part of a big scandal at the Paris Conservatory, entering in the Prix de Rome, and was refused like 4 or 5 times. But Fauré was actually the director of the Paris Conservatory at the time. And when his student finally was rejected at the 4th or 5th time, he basically did a Robespierre, they called it, the Robespierre at Fauré Robespierre, where he basically sacked half the conservatory faculty. And it became this big scandal and transformed the Paris Conservatory from only heralding, and focusing on French repertoire, but including some other people like Dandy, who was French, was writing in a Germanic style, and of course Wagner as well. So, in any case, some of the compositions, I want to play some of these because these are so well known, and hopefully you know them. But if not, it's exciting because it's the first time you get to experience some of these phenomenal pieces. Over 100 songs. His first compositions were vocal works. Orchestral, the Pavane, which you all probably know, but also his piano works that nobody knows really, but they're absolutely gorgeous. And then, of course, lots of choral works. I'm actually going to play some of these. I want to play Après un rêve. In whatever country you're from, there's some Fauré song that is the special Fauré song, and in America, it's Après un rêve. And so I'm going to play that one. And this one, I believe, is sung by Renee Fleming. And Renee Fleming has such a silky voice that is absolutely perfect for this piece. I'll play a little bit of this because it is 3 minutes long. So let me just make sure I'm sharing. Yes. Okay. I hate to stop it there because it's absolutely gorgeous, but I want to get through some of these other ones just to have a little idea. And then, of course, the Cantique de Jean Racine. Let's do this one a little bit. The Cantique de Jean Racine. Let's do the Pavane first because I just opened the Pavane. But the Pavane is a gorgeous piece that is, let me share this again, choral work. Oh no, we're listening to Pavane. Sorry, Pavane's not choral. Absolutely gorgeous. But you can see the characteristics. You can see the huge long lines, single voices that are spun out, so that lyrical line driven by melody, simple harmonies. But somehow, even though the harmonies are simple, it has this, again, this ethereal thread-like character to it. And then one other piece that I'll play, let's do the Cantique de Jean Racine because I mentioned this. But this is a choral work that maybe we can read through actually because it's utterly gorgeous. If you don't know this one, it's wonderful. Oh, so gorgeous. It's one of the most gorgeous pieces that I know. It's very actually reminiscent of the Pie Jesu, actually, with the harp and the, again, sort of like, again, very heavenly, angelic performance. So let me share this, where were we? But we are looking, of course, at the Fauré Requiem. And so, the Fauré Requiem is a work that was very meaningful to him. But if you look at this quote, everything I managed to entertain by way of religious illusion I put into my Requiem, which moreover is dominated from beginning to end by the very human feeling of faith in eternal rest. He did not, like Brahms, he did not, like Prokofiev, he did not feel like death was a tragic experience. He said death is a happy deliverance, an aspiration towards happiness above, rather than as a painful experience. And if you remember, if some of you were at some of the talks about Prokofiev, where I talked about Romeo and Juliet, Prokofiev also thought that, Romeo and Juliet actually was a happy story at the end because they, like both died and would be together in the afterlife. So he made a happy ending at the end. And of course, if you missed that lecture, Stalin, of all people, said, no, you need to follow Shakespeare's story. It's a little ludicrous to change Shakespeare's story. So bizarrely, we have Stalin to thank for that. But in any case, I wanted to actually show, just because it's beautiful, the church that Fauré premiered the Requiem at. And he actually, it was written for, it was used for a funeral, but he didn't actually, it didn't make a difference who it was used for. He's just like, it was for everybody. He used it at his funeral too, but he thought it was just music that could be given to anybody to perform. But La Madeleine in Paris, La Madeleine is very much the same as the cookie, as well as, Saint. But there's this wonderful 360 tour we can do of inside of l'Église de la Madeleine. And so we can actually pretend like we're there, and you can actually see this. It's a beautiful church. From this vantage point, it actually looks incredibly enormous. But of all things, it's actually considered to be one of the smaller churches in Paris. And you can see up here, it's utterly gorgeous, and it's very opulent. But if you can imagine singing, like some of you went on tour with BCCO to some of the churches and how reverberant those places are, to have this thread of music, this beautiful melodies, really just sort of echoing in this church, I think it would be absolutely gorgeous. The orchestra would be right in the center here with the chorus and the solos up in front. And the sound, because remember, churches are always chiastic, there's openings on either side, and it would actually be a very filling experience, but it would also be very echoey. But with chant and music that is made for reverberant spaces, it's a different feeling. And so to have light music like this filling the space actually would be really, it's like you're swimming in the music. Okay. So, finally, looking at the Requiem. Now, all of you have music that is either from previous scores, or if you haven't had scores before, IMSLP, which takes music that's out of copyright and makes it available to everybody. That's the score that I'm going to be moving off of. Now, one of the big goals is to make sure that we're sort of in the same place. So if you have a different score than the IMSLP version, try to see if they have rehearsal letters. Because if the page numbers don't match up, or I say, like at this section, the rehearsal letters will try to save you. And maybe what we might do is actually just say, hey, can you guys put in the measured numbers for the entire piece, whatever, and it'll make it easier so we're all on the same page, literally, right? And so just note that I'm going to be working off the IMLCP copy. You can do it digitally. You can actually also obviously use your own score with everything. But you see that there's 7 movements to the Fauré Requiem. Originally, it only had 5, and you might know that other requiems, especially the Verdi Requiem or some other, Mozart or some other ones, are much, much, much longer. This requiem is approximately 30 minutes in length, and the offertory and the Liberame. Liberame was actually composed beforehand. It was not something that was included originally, and the offertory was included either. But if you look at it, Introit and Kyrie, Sanctus Pie Jesu, Agnus Dei in Paradisum, without the offertory and Liberame, right? There is almost nothing that says that's a requiem, right? You have in Paradisum, okay, that's not part of the normal mass. Introit is not part of the normal, mass either. But if you have a Kyrie, Sanctus, Agnus Dei, those are 3 just standard parts of the mass. There is not a lot of movements here. Now, there is one noticeable big difference with this requiem with many, many others. And that is when you talk about a Mass for the dead, in the Catholic Church, as you know, that 12th to 13th century poem, the Dies Irae, the Day of Judgment and Death, where you talk about hell and brimstone coming down, the judge coming down to give the good entry into heaven and to send the other ones to, the underworld or whatnot. None of that is in this. And when you talk about the idea of the Fauré was, did not think that death was a terrible thing, why would he include the terror of judgment, right? because into a requiem, right? Why would he create, like in the Verdi Requiem, a huge bass drum pounding as you can hear stones falling from the sky? He includes nothing of that. And when you take the French lyricism, the lyrical aspect of Fauré, his natural way of writing, his viewpoints in terms of the Requiem itself, what you get is the same thing, a very ethereal, a very light, a very pleasant and beautiful Requiem. He actually said himself, I wrote the Requiem for pleasure, not for any, statement. And that's a bizarre thing to say. Just think about that. I wrote a Requiem, a Mass for the Dead, for pleasure, right? And again, when you think of how he viewed his religion, how he viewed and took his music, some of the darkest music is just single notes. The very first note. And then you have soft. You have some pensive music, but after this beautiful first this relatively dark section, you actually have music that is not too terrifying. It's not dark. You have music that is very much like chant, and then you listen to the other works that we listen to. You listen to the Après un rêve, you listen to the Pavane, the Cantique de Jean Racine. The idea of that solo melody flying out all over the place, you start to see characteristics of that throughout. And you have the chant showing up in the offertory. And then you have the altos coming in. It's so gorgeous. It's so gorgeous. So that's just some of the things that we're going to be working on. How do you create and spin utterly gorgeous melodies, have that ethereal tone, but still have good technique? One of the hardest things is to sing pianissimo. And so you need to support like heck to make sure that pianissimo isn't airy, but it has beautiful tone and is supported. To sing really in tune with pianissimo, you really need to support. And so it's not a piece where you're going to lose your voice. It's not a piece where you're going to feel hoarse at the end of rehearsal. But it is a piece that's going to engage your core. It's going to be a good workout for all of us, especially since we're all trapped indoors with terrible air and everything. And you're really going to try to focus on those aspects, getting good support, getting good spinning tone throughout all of this. Now, there's just like the Brahms Requiem, just like a lot of requiems, there's some structure to this. Originally, as you see, the centerpiece of the entire piece is a Pie Jesu, and it's a solo, originally for boy soprano, but he actually wanted it to be a female soprano. But we have a recording of this. I just want to share a little bit of this, just because, again, it falls under the same sort of beautiful tone here. And this is Barbara Bonney, who is absolutely gorgeous. And you can hear, again, what's hardest about that is maintaining the support over those long lines, spinning that tone, and especially going up in pitch and having those huge whole steps and half steps, maintaining that support again, spinning that tone, and it's just so gorgeously done. Barbara Bonney is famous for doing this. Renee Fleming, Kiri Takanawa, just gorgeous that have the ability to change tone like that. Now, last things I'll say before we start our rehearsal proper. I just want to share, and this is a little game for us. You can actually post in the chats. But I put the movements for some other requiems, and I want to see if you can guess which one are which. So let's see. There we go. These are 4 requiems. 4 requiems that maybe you have performed all of them. And so this is what you see in normal requiems, right? You have introit for all of them. You see dies irae in most of them. One has this huge dies irae, one has a longer dies irae, another one has a slightly shorter one. One looks like it's in 2 parts. And why not just give a couple minutes and see what you think. Don't cheat. See if I can, where can I see the chat? Oh, there it is, chat. Anybody have any ideas which ones are which? If you're talking about the first one on the left, that is not the Dvorak, but the one on
Mozart?
the far right is the Duruflé. Now, the Duruflé is another French composer, of course. And Duruflé was much later than in the 20th century, essentially. And whereas Fauré, we generally consider him to be a 19th century composer, even though his dates were 1845 to 1924. So yes, the Verdi is the second one, definitely the second one. And if you remember, the Verdi sort of elongating that dramatic aspect, and the most dramatic aspect of the Requiem is the Dies Irae. So he has all of those movements, all of which are separate actual movements, right? And the first one is right. The first one is Mozart. And so when we have the Mozart there, you can see technically that's a little bit cheating because, as you know, Mozart didn't complete his Requiem. So technically some of those were written by other people. But this one's a Zussmayr completion. But is, again, has a Dies Irae, Tuba Mirum. You can think about the trombone solo, the second trombone solo, tenor trombone solo, Tuba Mirum Spajan Sol. You have you can think of the movements in your head almost. And the last one, we says Duruflé. Anybody for the third one? I don't think I saw anybody say what the third one is. Oh no! Yes, somebody did say it. Second one from the end is Dvorak. And if you remember, Dvorak, amazing fugues, just like Mozart actually. Really used fugues for the benefit of the telling of the Requiem and whatnot. And so it's kind of fun because you look at these and you really contrast a lot of these. I didn't put the War Requiem on because there's like 90 billion movements, but it is a wonderful work. And so I want to welcome everybody, of course, to this fall season of BCCO. And this is going to be, I think, a really fun experience. Even though we can't congregate together, I think the experience about it I'm really excited about because we're diving into, again, what I feel is the heart of the work. And that's a really important thing. You remember, heart in French is la chœur, and la chœur is also the chorus. And so, like really feeling the heart, feeling all of you, all of us together, and then doing a piece like this and diving in what really is a French approach to this piece. How do we do this? The technical aspects about singing and trying to support, develop our muscles, develop our natural singing abilities and whatnot. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Julia Morris, as many of you know, is our assistant conductor. She's going to lead us through a warm-up, and then we're going to get started at the first movement. So Julia, all yours.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. It's so great to see you all, to see all your smiling and happy faces. Yay, happy fall season. Let's start with the warm-up. So if you are able, go ahead and stand. And if you choose to sit, make sure that you're on the edge of your chair and your feet are flat on the floor and you have nice, good, straight posture. So even though you're sitting, you're still in a nice, good singing posture. And if you're standing, go ahead and march in place, and let's bring our knees up. You can go ahead and put your hands out so that you have something to hit your knees to. You can choose the level at which your hands are. Higher if you want to give yourself a challenge. And now just kind of relax your feet and find a nice comfortable spot for your feet beneath your hips, so your feet should be hip width apart. Go ahead and put your arms kind of on your hips and go ahead and like hula hoop a little bit, just to get a nice stretch, some movement. And then come back and find that center. And go ahead and bring your arms up to the sky. Try to touch the ceiling. And then bring your arms down into a cactus position. So your arms should be approximately parallel to the floor, or your elbow should be. And lean back slightly. So I'm going to turn this way so you can see. But I'm going to lean back just a little bit, not a whole bunch, just a little bit. Just stop when you start to feel gravity. Pull your arms and your shoulder blades kind of together. So the idea is to let gravity kind of help you stretch out your collarbone and your chest and your shoulders and all of that goodness. Just to get a nice good stretch, just kind of open everything up. Take some nice cleansing breaths and just think about relaxing. Singing is always best when it's relaxed. All right, and let's bring our arms down slowly. Go ahead and roll your head to one side and take your hand and kind of pull below your collarbone. So starting at your collarbone and pull down a little bit on the skin, and then lean your head in the opposite direction so you get a really nice good stretch across your neck and some of those muscles there. And then go ahead and roll your head across your chest over to the other side, and same thing, pulling down some of the skin at your collarbone. Kind of feels weird to say, but it gives you a nice good stretch. And then go ahead and find your center again. So make sure that your head is kind of, there should be a nice line, basically, from your feet, which are flat on the floor, a little bit buoyant, and your knees should be a little bit buoyant, but there's a nice straight line from the floor, feeling the energy from the floor, from the roots, all the way up through your legs, through your hips, through your torso, nice and tall, and then also through your head. So you should have a nice tall posture, nice open posture, and relax your hands at your side. And we're going to do some breathing. So breathe in very slowly. I'm going to count. So we'll breathe in for 4 beats and then exhale for 4 beats. And focus on where your breath is going. So we've talked about before deep breaths, but also think about expansion. So not only breathing into your belly, but also think about breathing into your sides and breathing into this whole torso. Your whole canister here on your torso should expand with your breath. Okay, so think about that. You can even place a hand on your belly, on your side, if you want to kind of feel that expansion happening. Here we go. And breathe in, 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4, and in, and out. And in, 2, 3, 4, and out. Last one, and in, and out. Excellent. So hopefully finding that space, that's the space you always want to breathe into, no matter how quick of a breath that you have. If it's over a 2-beat rest, if it's over a 1-beat rest, half a beat rest, you always want to breathe into that space before you start. So now we're going to breathe in on 1 count and hiss out on an over 4 beats, and then we'll take a breath again and hiss out over 8 beats. Take another breath over 12 beats. So each time we're adding 4 beats to hiss out to try to build our stamina and also find that breath connection. So a nice consistent stream of air on S. Okay? So here we go. Ready, and breathe in and hiss out. 1, 2, 3, 4, and let all of your air out. Now breathe in again and hiss out for 8. Out. And in 12, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and out. In again. Out for 16. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, out, and then we'll do 20 but on a pulse. So instead of a nice consistent s, we'll do s, s, s. So you get a nice diaphragm kick. Here we go. Ready? Breathe in. S, 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 and up. Okay, and then last thing, last breathing exercise. Go ahead and pant like a dog. It's gonna feel weird, but I'm gonna do it with you. So here we go, and so hopefully, and that's all for now. But that should really engage your diaphragm, really get your breathing muscles going. So that's what you need for support or breathing or singing, is that engagement with that muscle. So that helps you identify what you need to use. And now let's do some singing. So I'm going to sit down at the piano. Stay standing if you are standing. But let's start with lip trills. So we'll sing and go. Last one. Great, and we'll take it back down here. And everyone say king for me. King. So that NG at the end of king, we're gonna sing on that space, and we'll sing. It doesn't have to be loud, it just needs to be focused. So hopefully if you sing that, you'll feel a buzz in what we call your mask. So you might feel it in your nose or the kind of parts of your face that are in where a masquerade mask might go. So feeling that buzz and resonance and placement in that space. It doesn't have to be, again, it doesn't have to be loud, but feel that breath engagement as you sing. Here we go, ready, and.
Oh.
Nice deep breath. Last one. And then we'll jump back down here and sing sa. Sa for sanctus. And you want to make sure to give a nice long S like we did in our breathing warm-up to get you started on your breath. And when you start to sing, don't disengage that, but stay on the breath. So it's not sa, sa. Hopefully you could hear the difference. So we want that second one, nice engaged connection to the breath. Ready, and sa. Sa. And that's it for that one. We'll do 2 more. So we'll sing first. So focusing on the jump that you have. When you jump from the lowest note to the highest note, making that space that you need for the top note, you can make that on the bottom note. So it's not like keep that nice space. Everyone just make a yawn sound. Just yawn. Make yourself yawn. And use that space when you sing. So breathe into that space. Start there on the low note. Here we go. Ready? And one more. And then we'll do one last exercise to pull it all together. Let's start with an arpeggio and a scale. So we'll sing ya. Here we go. Ready? And last one. And now take one last big final breath and do what we call a siren from the top of your range all the way down. Here we go. Nice deep breath in. All right, and with that, I will pass it back to Ming.
Great. So let's everybody get out your scores and your pencil. You should always have a pencil at rehearsal. And we're going to be looking at the introit and Kyrie. As you know, introit for Requiem starts with a text. What we're going to do is we're going to start without words for now because I want to work on some musical aspects first. But let's read through a little bit. I'm going to actually play a little bit, not too slow for the first part, but let's just start from the beginning. You get a nice D chord, D note, and then you have a chord that just emerges from that. And it's almost every single note between the soprano and bass line. And as always, if you're bass 2, then that's the bottom line, bass 1, then sing the top line of the bass line. Tenor 2, the bottom note of the tenor line. Tenor 1, the top note of the tenor line. Altos are unison for now. And the sopranos. Let's start from the beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. On new. 4, 1. Alright. Let's do that last part for my sake, starting from Luce at A E's, the very last 3 bars before the fermata. And 1. A very nice opening. Now, what I want you to do is that these chords are really, really long. The D major, D minor chord that you have at the very beginning is the same chord. And generally, what we say in singing is that you need to sustain support the entire time, or else the pitch tends to drop a little bit as it goes on. And so what we're going to do is, for this rehearsal, we're going to sing the 8th notes. No, 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 no. Let's just try that. So instead of 1, 2, 3, and 4, we're going to go no, 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 no. As if there are 8th notes for every single one of those chords. Let's try that. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and no, 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 no. And that last 8th note that you just sang should just be as loud as every single one. So there's no diminuendo, there's no loss of support. It's just no, 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 no. Now, let's try that one more time. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and no, 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 no. I want you to focus on what it feels like to support through that entire thing when you have lots of notes. And now what we're going to do is I want you to try to sing it with 16 notes. No, 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 no. We're going to sing it like this. Okay, let's try that. 1 and the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can hear no, 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 no. Each time, if you re-emphasize the note, it's like calculus. The better support is going to be if you have more points to check into, right? You're going to sustain it through the entire time. That's what it feels like to sustain those lines. Go back to singing just the music as it is on new, no, 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 but feeling like you're singing 16 notes. No, 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 no. Thinking like you can support all the way through. Last time. 1 and the 2 and the normal singing, but I'm going to count off. 1 and the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and no. And that's the sort of sustain that we're going to get on. Let's continue on to the next section. Again, still no pitch. The basses have a whole step down, but it is actually not that big of a step because you still have the third of the chord. The tenors, second tenors, have the same C, you're the third of the chord. Make sure that it's not too low. Okay? Sopranos and altos, well, altos move up to the A, but sopranos, even though it's the same pitch, we have to think higher and higher in pitch. Okay? So let's do next line. 1 and the 2. I'll give you 1 and 2, okay, for the next line. 1 and 2. Off and 1. Now, do you hear the voice parts by themselves actually feel a little bit empty? There are sometimes on et lux perpetua that we have this open chord, right? That doesn't sound full. We have this. We want it to be full. We want that third to be there. And that's part of the brilliance of it, that gives it a little bit more lightness to it. We start off from darkness, but then we start building up towards the light. Okay, let's start from the beginning again. Still on new, but I want you to really focus on how it feels to sustain through those lines as if you were refreshing the pitch as much as 16th notes throughout. From the very beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Let's go on. 4, 1. Now, at the very beginning, we have this very rich chord. The basses, I want you to mark up your dynamic to piano. We want the fullness of this foundation to be full. Sopranos, I want you to think of real pianissimo, and the tenors and altos need to fit between the basses and sopranos. If we were in rehearsal, I would say just be slightly louder than the sopranos and slightly less than the basses. You really want to create that pyramid of sound. And when you hear the recording that we're going to hear at the end of Robert Shaw doing this with Atlanta Symphony and Atlanta Symphony Chorus, you're going to hear that first note and the chorus just being enveloped and emerging from that chord. And that's what we want, to create a darkness from which we'll go into light. So, the very first time we go into light, of course, is when the word Domine comes, the word God. Dona eis Domine. Dona eis Domine. And you can hear that it's an F major chord, but again, it's not settled. Grant us, please, Lord, right? Rest eternal, grant us. And then when you have and light perpetual, that's when we open up from our crescendo, from whatever dynamic I told you about, either pianissimo or piano, all the way to forte in one bar. So, for that, et lux perpetua, can you write in the dynamics? The first note is pianissimo or piano. The second note is piano or mezzo piano. And then the next note is mezzo forte. That's how drastic this crescendo is. Just like if you know Haydn's Creation, where he says, "Let there be light," and the entire chorus goes, "light." This is almost like that version. We start off from this darkness, we hear the word Lord, and we change to a major chord, not quite there yet. And then when we go to light perpetual, the lightness of this work, we have this grandiose crescendo, from pianissimo to forte. Okay? And then you see luceat is sempre forte. And then we have the drastic diminuendo back to piano. Now basses, just like we said before, you're actually one dynamic higher than everybody else. So please mark your part, diminuendo, for luceat only down to mezzo piano. So that at rehearsal B, or at least my rehearsal B, which is the third saying of luceat, we actually have a real piano or pianissimo, depending on your voice part. And then finally, the softest dynamic we've had so far, luceat eis, the very last part before the fermata. You have this pianissimo, or for the basses, pianissimo. Now, let's go through that again. And the two major things we're going to be working on in this section is our idea of sustaining and refreshing your support, not just every single note and quarter note, not if you have a half note, definitely not one half note, but sustained throughout, as if you had 16 notes, or it's a constant, sustained, ongoing refreshing of the pitch and your support. Then, the other thing to work on is the crescendo. Now remember, this is not a garish excess of crescendo that is Wagner or Mahler. This is a natural opening up. And so the crescendo isn't driven. It just emerges. We are going to naturally go in one bar. It is a very slow bar, from pianissimo to forte. From the very beginning, let's do this entire section before we can all sing afterwards the tenor solo line, the tenor line, right? From the beginning. Again, I'm going to count 4 just for the tempo, and then I'm going to play the first note. 1, 2, 3, 4, orchestra. 2, 3, 4. Excellent. So, that last chord, altos, make sure you write an arrow, because an A major chord, you're very far away from the basses in terms of interval. Your interval is very large. You want to make sure that's nice and high. Sopranos, that very last part where it says pianissimo luceat eis, you want to make sure that that A natural is really, really high. That's a notorious note for sopranos. It's actually a hard part in the voice. It needs to be much higher than so there's a lot of treacherous thirds here. We want to make sure that we tune them, just like instrumentalists do all the time. They know that there are certain intervals that they have to retune in their brain on how to approach. So we can do that too. Last thing that I'm going to say, I forgot. No, B. B for Bravo. Now these are the ascending lines. Be very sure about what is a half step and a whole step. Like for instance, tenors. G to A natural. Really high, B flat. A really high half step to C flat. That's a funky chord. With the basses there, you got that 7th, minor 7th there. And so you want to make sure that every single time you take a step up, you're thinking that you're taking a very large step up, like you're going to go for a step on the staircase. You want to put your foot higher than the staircase. You don't want to be trying to hit it directly at it because you're going to trip, or heaven forbid, trying to be under it. So you're going to try to do that. Now, the beauty of this next section is that even though it says a section tenor solo, we can all sing it, because why not? So we should sing all of these solo lines because it would be a lot of fun. Starting from the andante moderato, which means andante means walking tempo, moderato. We're going to sing again on new only. We're going to add the text a little bit later on, maybe next rehearsal. But new for now, because what we want to do is get those clean interval changes and get the sustain line. No, 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 no. And you want to think about tiny little crescendos before each pitch change so you don't drop off like a piano. No, 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 but no, no, no. Really sustain through the line. So let's read through this next section, which is andante moderato. And why don't we read through all of the solo lines, from the tenor line to the soprano line, okay? So this is in my page. It looks like it's pages 3 through 6. We're just going to read through that for now, okay? Here we go. And again. Soprano line. Excellent. Really, really, really beautiful lines. Beautiful lines. Now, when we approach the text for these eventually, we're going to be approaching it in French diction, which is actually really great for singing, because what you want to do is have a lot of vibrancy in your, in your cheekbones, and French singing actually brings up the way we pronounce these vowels very forward. So when you sing the nu, I don't want you to think about the nu as being sort of a dark covered sound. I want you to think of the nu still forward. Nu versus no. No, 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 no. Even with a little bit of a buzz here. No, 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 no. One of the things that, if you have a stand for your music, one of the things that a voice teacher I saw in a masterclass was really actually physically having some motion to represent the engagement of our muscles. As we know that singing tends to be something that's very hard to conceptualize because all the things are inside of us. You know, your vocal folds are inside of us. We can't see how they're, how tight they are or whatnot. You can see some muscle tension here, but in reality, a lot of our things are tongue placement, everything's inside. And so we often use, just like when we do the sighs, woo, if you have your arm representing your soft palate and the lift, or the pitch, it actually helps your muscles inside have something to relate to, even though you can't see it. So, for this next time, if you have the ability to do so, let's sing through this line, but this time I want you to physically, somehow, either going their hands sweeping, no, 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 or no, 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 or if you're even, if you have a lot of room, you can even like you're walking. No, But again, it's to break up the idea that this is music that is static, that there's nothing in between the attack of the pitch. What we're trying to build in is that sustain an idea of connection, that a note is not just the beginning of the note, but it's the entire body of the note before it changes. So let's sing those parts again. Again, this is Zoom. I can't tell if you're going to sing on pitch or not, but I would urge you to try to see if you can still stay on new. Keep it forward, and then do some physical motion that represents the spinning of the support, the constancy of refreshing and keeping that support engaged. So again, andante moderato, the soprano and tenor solo, the section solo lines until we get to the rehearsal F. 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's so gorgeous. It's so gorgeous. You can see how this music, again, is very horizontal. And every single thing is about the contour of the line. So there are phrasings, there are little mini crescendos and decrescendos, but it all comes from that support being there from the very beginning. Let's continue on. So we're going to go on to rehearsal F, right? Where we stopped. Exaudi. And then we're going to read a little bit more of the movement, and then we're going to take a social break or a no break. So let's read on. Aha! Great. So I'm going to start the full bar before F on the D minor chord. And then you're going to come in at exaudi. And then remember that F major chord in that position, I think, is actually what we sang in the very beginning for Domine, for Lord. Okay? So here we are. F, the bar before F. One. Now, here's where we get to some fun chords here, because you have, right? And then if you're in these ear training classes, which we're going to come back to, this is one of those instances where you actually have an augmented chord here. The choo-choo train. And so we don't actually see these chords very often, these augmented chords. But it's a really fun chord when it comes up. So let's look at these parts a little bit louder, different. So if you look at rehearsal F, you have fortissimo, and then one beat, fortissimo diminuendo to piano, Then you have one beat crescendo to fortissimo, back to decrescendo to piano. This is incredibly dramatic, right? This is for the most dramatic. This X-Audi does not have accents on it. It is not like when I play at the piano. It's X-Audi versus X-Audi. It's a really sustained line. And so we're going to maintain that idea of sostenuto throughout and not use the consonants to separate words, but to actually connect them. And so we're going to be doing that in warm-ups as well, too. But so this is a little taste of the first movement. Again, we have about 14, 15 weeks. So what we're going to be doing is these movements in little chunks. We're going to be doing like the first movement over the course of 3 sessions or whatnot. We're going to do another movement, and we have 7 of them, so they're going to overlap as they go through. Right now, we're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we're going to come back. And I think, let me see. We'll have Julia probably continue. I think she wants to do the Sanctus. So we're going to take a little break for now, and I think maybe Christian keep the time. But if you need to go potty or you can tell me with my kids in Zoom classes, do you need to go potty? Or, did you eat yet? Did you have water? So make sure you have all those things. So they're still applicable to all of us. And then we'll come back in just a little bit. Okay.
Hi, Cedar.
Maybe we can start with a 5-minute break, and we'll see what happens after that.
Okay, 5-minute break. If you want to just stay and chat, just go ahead.
Hi. It's hard to chat with a lot of people.
It sure is. Hi, Alan.
Does everyone know that you can pin the person? I hope everyone knows.
You can.
Oh no, how do you do that?
What do you mean pin them?
Is Ming in the middle for you or not? I wondered.
No.
No, then you just pin. If you see Ming, just pin. You'll pin Ming.
You'll see
Put your cursor in the upper right-hand corner. There's a drop-down menu, and
but that's just to do the speaker view.
Yeah. Well, it's another way.
No. In each of the gallery photos, you have the option to pin that person so they won't move around as people are moving and as speakers are changing.
Right. That's what I wanted. Yeah. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
I thought that was going steady when you pin somebody.
I thought that would be useful, but I didn't know. I didn't want to interrupt.
Doesn't work on an iPad. Does anyone know where it is on an iPad?
It doesn't work on an iPad.
It's a MacBook thing.
Or a PC thing, apparently.
And yeah.
Is anybody able to put us into smaller groups?
That would make sense.
We need breakout rooms.
We will.
I believe that's planned.
Breakup rooms.
It's worth it for just a few minutes if we're all going to come back together.
No, we don't have time for that.
Pam Miller.
This is Zoom Central. I don't want to break you into smaller groups now because it will destroy our ability to go into sectionals later. So we can do that at the end of the session, perhaps.
Yes, that makes sense.
Now here's something you can't do in a normal BCCO group.
Right.
And get the wine.
I gotta get some water.
Jerry's drinking at rehearsal.
Right, Jerry.
Hey, this is Zoom. We can do anything.
He's having a great time.
If and when we come back, I am going to bring some gin or something. Just to prove you wrong.
Sneak it in a hip flask.
Yeah.
Sarah, only after rehearsal, Sarah.
Whatever, I knew someone. I was in a concert once and we were about to go on stage. And this guy said, "Hey, do you want some?" I think it was Slivovitz or something. I said, "Really?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, it relaxes me, And of course, I was right in front and it was a kind of a small chorus. So I was like probably 6 feet away from the conductor. But I took a swig anyway, just to see what it was like.
Sarah?
Well, Sarah, cheers to you from Marjorie with my glass of wine, and to you, Jerry, for suggesting
Sarah, you obviously haven't sung with the Russians. They drink before, during, and after.
Yeah, right. I know. I might have
A
done
little
that.
vodka before.
I did the rock
It always goes
all
well.
night vigil, and I might have slurped a little bit up before that one too. That was with SF Choral. We did that a few years ago.
I prefer to sing sober. I want to know
Yeah, but-
how good or bad I am.
Yeah.
Hey, Sarah. SF Chorus could have used when they sang their Rachmaninoff. They could have used the
Everybody
few
on
shots
that.
of vodka before they sang.
Oh,
They did a little more Russian in them.
Is this a particular chorus you're talking about?
Yeah, Slavyanka.
Oh,
They have
Slavyanka.
the best after parties in the business.
Oh, okay.
No. We used to have those best parties.
Very
We have the best funerals too.
Yeah.
The horseradish vodka. Those people know how to party.
They really do.
I
Not to
know.
mention the caviar and the herring.
The salmon. Yeah.
On this part of
I haven't had dinner yet, so we should probably cut that conversation short.
No.
Hey, oh, Ming is back. Never mind. Hi, Ming. I was gonna say that a friend of mine, I'll put in the chorus notes though, a friend of mine had like her town burned down recently, and so she's thinking of coming down here for a while. So if anyone has a place to rent for a year or so, she might let me know. But I'll put it in chorus notes too.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
should
Well, not great that her place burned down, but
Oh, well, her house didn't burn, but she kind of, everything around it did, and she kind of doesn't want to be there right now.
Oh,
yeah, of course.
my place is going up for rent, and it's very reasonable in the Hiller Highlands.
Wow. Wait, who said that? Oh my God.
I'm Karen Natosi.
What? Okay.
I'm moving to Burlingame.
Oh, you're in Burlingame?
I'm going to be there.
Oh, you're gonna be. Oh, okay. So where are you usually?
I'm up in the Hiller Highlands on Charing Cross.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah, I've in-law. It's an in-law suite that it just went on Craigslist.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Do you know? I still don't even like know who you are. Could you just email me? I know I am. I'm Sarah Brooke. Could you please?
You know what, Sarah? I see you, Sarah. Go on Craigslist and use the map feature, and you'll see it posted. And it's available like October 1st.
Whoa.
Oh my God.
If I can get out of here and move my piano.
Yeah, you're good. I heard you. Your piano was great.
What was that?
We're gonna come back.
You
And so we're going to come back to rehearsal. But my favorite part about the exchange was that it looked like in those squares that you were actually looking at each other. You're just like, which square is it? It was really fantastic. So in any case, yeah. So if you can you can actually write this in the chat too on the right, and so you can make sure that you guys have information there. So we're going to hand it over now to Julia, who's going to look at the Sanctus. So look in your version for the Sanctus, close to the end. And Julia, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Ming. So if you're using the IMSLP version, which was on the BCCO website, it's page 24 that we're looking at. If you don't have that version, apparently my mic needs to be louder. Give me one moment while I adjust that. I'm seeing some of these. Is that any better?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so yeah, if you're on the IMSLP version, it's page 24. If you have a different version, this is the third movement, Sanctus. Hopefully you can maybe find it in your content pages. So we're gonna go ahead and start. Altos, you don't get to sing until the last two notes officially of this movement, but I would still love you to sing either you can choose between singing with the soprano line or you can sing with the tenor and basses. Both are in your range. One is up the octave, one is down. So you can choose. Maybe alto ones can sing up and alto twos can sing down. But please do sing with us still. Everyone together on the very first entrance that we have. Don't worry about words yet, but we'll sing on new again. The very first 2.5 measures that we sing. So starting on a B flat, here we go. I'll give you 3 beats as an entrance. 1, 2, 3. No, 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 off. So, and tenors and basses, please do sing along with that down the octave. I know that you're not singing at that moment, but you have very similar exact material that comes a second later. So everyone, one more time on that new. Ready, and. No, 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 off. Now, the thing about this, it's only a 2.5 bar phrase here, but it can get very notey because you have a whole step up and then a half step down and then back to that B flat. So it can get very punchy, very notey. No, 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 which is not what we want. As we were talking about in the presentation, as Ming was saying, this is very ethereal music, and it's marked pianissimo as well. So it's soft, it's stretchy, sostenuto, it's very ethereal and light. So instead, we're going to try to sing this, listen to it while I play it on the piano, and I want you to hiss as I play it. And imagine that you're singing the notes. And the idea is that when I was taking voice lessons in college, my teacher told me some of the best practice you can do is silently looking at the score and imagining yourself singing, because your voice will kind of ghost. Your vocal cords will kind of move similarly to the way that you expect them to as if you were singing. So it's a very good way to practice when you don't want to overwork your voice. Or in this case, if you hiss through while imagining that you're singing these notes, you can find that breath connection while you're singing, while you're listening to and imagining that you're singing these notes. And that will help you with that connection and with that engagement, that breath connection that Ming was also talking about in the first movement. So everyone hiss as I play the notes for you. 1, 2, 3, and off. Hopefully that was very engaged. And now just on ah this time, nice and connected, very floaty, very light. Ready, and off. So I think the hardest part of this is, honestly, it's very deceptive because it's only whole steps up and down, but it's hard to make this very ethereal and light and connected in a way, and also in tune, which I'm sure we're all singing very beautifully. Unfortunately, we can't hear. Okay, so moving on from just these 2 measures, if you'll take a look with me through the score for the next couple pages, we have our sopranos and our altos who are singing with us for this, singing for starting on measure 3 and 4. Song, do, song. And then there's an overlap, tenors and basses start. Song, do, song, do. Some sopranos again. And tenors and basses. So you kind of pass off this phrase back and forth a couple of times. So let's try singing that all together. Still on new, so no words yet. Still on new. Starting with sopranos and altos who want to join. 1 and 2 and 3. No, no, no. Tenors, basses. All right, and then now we have a different section. So if you noticed on that whole last section that we sang, everything was marked pianissimo, but there was no dynamic change. So it's all just one beautiful, soft, ethereal pianissimo connected, still with intention and movement. But then when we look at letter A, where we just stopped, not only do the notes change, but we see a crescendo decrescendo over the next two notes. So sopranos, you sing at measure A. So you go up to a nice D flat. Sopranos and altos who are singing along, sing that for me. Ready? And. Off. And the cutoff should be right on the and of two. So for example, at the top of, well, on the third measure of that phrase where the cutoff is, in case you don't have the same measures, would be oos. So it's right on that and of two. So sopranos, you have that D flat in that phrase, but tenors, you have a D natural. So tenors and basses, when you sing, and then it's another pass back and forth again. So the sopranos sing one more time with a D flat again. And then tenors and basses one more time with that D natural. So tenors and basses, especially on that D natural that you have on those phrases after letter A, make sure to write an arrow up on those D naturals because those can really, it can fall flat because you're expecting to match exactly what the sopranos just gave you with that D flat, but you have to be even higher. So I actually want everybody to sing both examples. So I just want us to go, no, 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 and then breathe, and then no, 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 no. Okay, so that we can feel the difference, exactly how much distance there is between that D flat and that D natural. That's so much space. So everyone together singing both of those. I know that they overlap, but we're going to take a breath after we finish the soprano phrase and then begin the tenor and bass phrase so we can hear them right next to each other. Ready? 1, 2, 3. No, 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 and breathe. No, 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 no. So it's really quite a big difference. So tenors and basses, make sure to really keep that nice and high. And as I mentioned a second ago, this A section is, you see that crescendo decrescendo for the first time. So instead of keeping that nice connected ethereal presence, do have a little bit of a swell and decrescendo, which should happen naturally as you're rising and falling in pitch, but also make sure that it's you're aware of it and you're creating it and it's not just happening. So let's begin at measure A. And we're going to do the same thing because it passes back and forth a couple of times. So we'll start with the sopranos and then tenors and basses come in where you come in 2 measures later with that overlap. Okay, so right at letter A. Sopranos, 1, and altos we're singing. 1, 2, and 3. No, 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 no. Nicely done. So now, if you'll turn back to the beginning of this section one more time, I just want to point out a couple things in terms of the words. So turning back to page, or just the beginning of the Sanctus. The words for this movement are Sanctus Dominus Deus Sabaoth. And that's kind of one sentence or one phrase with text. But if you notice, the sopranos first sing Sanctus Sanctus. Tenors and basses sing Sanctus Sanctus. Then for that second repeat of that music, Sanctus Dominus. Tenors and basses repeat Sanctus Dominus. Then at letter A, Dominus Deus. So, and then the tenors and basses, Dominus Deus. Then at the next soprano entrance, Deus Sabaoth. Deus Sabaoth. And then one measure before B, we have Sanctus Dominus Deus, and tenors and basses continue Deus, Deus Sabaoth. So it took us this whole entire time to get to the full ending of the phrase of text. It was a bunch of repeating. It's almost like you're slowly building through this section. So even though the beginning has that pianissimo where there's no crescendo, decrescendo, no dynamic changes, when we do see the crescendo, decrescendo starting at letter A, imagine that each reiteration builds a little bit more, has a little bit more of a crescendo, decrescendo, has a little bit more of that swell and presence to build into the text as you continue and build that phrase together. So let's look together. This is letter B, one measure before letter B. So this is where the sopranos sing. It's the first time that we have a full phrase, like a full 4-bar phrase. And sopranos, and this time you sing that D natural, so make sure that it's nice and high, so it's the same thing that the tenors and basses have been kind of echoing you with. So altos and sopranos, everyone, let's sing this together, this whole 4-bar phrase. I'll play it down the octave too, in case everyone wants to sing along. So 1, 2, 3. It's such a beautiful, gorgeous phrase. Now sopranos, I don't know about you, but for me, this line lies directly on my break of my passaggio. And it's also, considering that this is still in the land of pianissimo or piano, it's easy to think, instead of, oh no, this is getting high and this is soft, I have to use less breath. You want to use as much breath as possible, keep that connection to the breath, but think about your placement instead. So think about that buzzing in the mask or in like the forehead. You should feel that engagement and feeling the sound shoot out through your head and using your breath to bring you through. So sopranos, let's try that one more time. 1, 2, and breathe. And now we're in this tonality in tenors and basses. You can take it on with an A natural here. And again, you now have a 4-bar phrase for the first time. So tenors, let's sing starting at, this is your entrance after letter B. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. That B flat kind of comes out of nowhere. So really that's some place to kind of lead to. So make sure that you have direction and momentum going into that B flat and make it special. Okay, so let's now, we have just a couple minutes left. So let's go ahead and head back to the beginning. Unfortunately, I cannot play piano for those of you who know. But I can kind of do what I've been doing, playing along with your parts and kind of nodding to help with entrances, so we can kind of feel this overlapping feeling of this movement. And I want us to focus on this sing through of this section. Starting in the first couple of pages, really finding that soft pianissimo sound that doesn't grow. So even though you're coming up and down in pitch, it stays that nice, same consistent dynamic. And you're still using lots of breath and breath support. So think of that hiss the entire time that you're singing. So altos and sopranos, this is the very top of the movement, and we'll go until where we just finished. Very top of the movement, and here we go. 1, 2, and 3. And we'll stop there for now for this movement, and I will hand it back to Ming.
Thank you, Julia. You know, that's this is one of my favorite movements because, like Julia was saying, you don't have the melody at the beginning, and it very much sounds like it. But the orchestra has a beautiful line, and so you know when the basses and basses come in, you know the orchestra is. And so you get this beautiful, beautiful melody that you're accompanying, like you're part of the orchestra. But if you also look at the beginning of the Sanctus, just at the beginning of the Sanctus, if you look at well, it's like woodwinds and harp and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, like if you look at it, da da dee da dee da dee da dee, it's in groups of 2 sets of 16th notes, not 3. The meter says 3/4, but it's actually in groups of 2, just like you. And so you're in half notes. So the beginning could be 3 bars of 2 beats rather than 2 bars of 3 beats like it is. And for you in the chorus with the orchestra, that is going on, those couplets of 2 beats, while the melody is in 3. And so it creates a sort of uncertainty, like, again, like you're swimming in the music where there's not a definitive downbeat. The music, again, is less vertical because everything is just floating and horizontal. It's absolutely gorgeous. But as you build note by note, like out the soprano, do, mi, no, se, do, mi, no, se. Each time, like Julia was saying, it gets more and more, like it builds each time, like single notes at a time. And it's very evocative. And what ends up happening is people are like, oh my goodness, this melody, do, 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 that doesn't sound like a melody. It's not the melody. It's not the melody. But it's the idea of trying to meld in the orchestra, come from the orchestra to create your melody, create the melody that you hear, you know, from above, from the treble instruments. And so it's a gorgeous, gorgeous movement. Think about the other sanctuses that we've sung. Sancti, sanctuses that we've sung, right? Sanctus, Sanctus. And this is exactly the opposite. It is so beautiful and tender. And so what we're going to do is we're going to actually sing through with Robert Shaw, back from the dead, you know, because again, death is not an ending for 4A. So we're going to sing with Robert Shaw and the Atlanta Symphony Chorus, and hear the orchestra together as one of our final things for most of the rehearsals that we'll have is actually sing through with the orchestra and following your parts. What I'm going to do is actually not share my screen, but I'm going to play the music, which I believe is actually going to come through computer screen so I can conduct and see if that might work. And so, Christian, can you tell me immediately if it's not the computer sound, because I do want it to be a good sound for everybody.
Sure, just click that checkbox, and that'll be the trick.
Yeah, it's not going to be sharing that video though. I want.
Oh, I see. Wait a minute, I gotta think about that for a second. We've done that before. How do we do that?
Let me. If you guys pin my picture, you'll see it small.
That's right.
Then that should be hopefully a good start at least. So this is reading through the first movement, Foyer Requiem. We didn't read through all of it, but might as well just read through it for fun. Okay? So I'm going to see if I can see myself. Okay, great. Oh, beautiful piece. Beautiful piece. So this is our first rehearsal, and it is wonderful to see everybody. I think we are actually still going to have, if you want to hang out a little bit, I think some of us are going to still keep our mics. I mean, like we can still hang out afterwards, have a drink and whatnot. And so please join us if you'd like to. And this is going to be a wonderful start. And I heard some of the break talking about wine, and that is particularly French. So now everybody can go get a glass of wine too. So please join us. Thank you again. And of course, remember that these are Zoom sessions now. If we have people, if friends of ours in New York, in Europe, or well, maybe not Europe since it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, but if you have other people in Hawaii, have them feel free to join us for this semester, because I think those are going to be really, really good.
New Zealand, Australia.
New Zealand, yes. So there was a note here of somebody saying that the first measures are quite long. That is actually the tempo marking that's indicated, and not many people have the ability to do it that slow. Some people actually conduct this in 8, because 80 to the chord note, 80 to the 8th note is da, dee, da, dee, da, dee, da, dee. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and Requieme. You know, it's going to be much, yeah. Yes, definitely share with people, but do remember that obviously we want people to register. And so, so just go through the normal registration process for singing. So, yes, so I'm going to open it up to everybody now, but thank you to Julia. You'll see Paul too, I promise. Paul is going to be leading sectionals and doing some other activities too, but we ran out of time today. And of course, thanks to Christian and the rest of the board, and because it's been a wonderful summer planning for this too. And so obviously it's a working board, so we owe everything to the board. So thank you everybody, and feel free to stay on.
Thank you, Ming.
Thank you, Ming.
I'm going to switch
Thanks,
to.
Ming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right now.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I
Special
just
thanks
wanted
to
to
all
say
those.
hi and welcome to
Thank
all the
you.
people. Thanks to everyone
Sacrifice.
who's joined us.
Thanks,
Nice to meet you.
everybody.
It's great to see you.
Hi,
Hi,
Jane.
Nadine.
Hi, everyone.
With you.
Salute.
Hi, Nadine.
Hi.
Hey, this is Christian. I just muted everybody just for a second. Some of us get a very strong echo, and we noticed something yesterday in testing. If you're running Zoom and you have original sound on, please turn that aspect off. There's a circumstance where that leads to bad echoes. If you know what I'm talking about, make that change, and if not, we'll just wing it and we'll send out a tech note tomorrow. But that helps with the echo. Okay. All right. Now you can unmute yourselves again. Sorry about the interruption.
Yeah. You want to leave anytime soon?
Who did the great PowerPoint? Oh well.
Yeah, it was awesome.
There's this new online system called Prezi, spelled Prezi, that Angela, my wife, let me know. And it is so easy.
Really? Okay, I want to try it.
And all those like switching and nested pages and all that kind of stuff are just like inherent. You're just like, I want to make a nested page, boom, and just gives you. And if you want to do a template, it's like you just change the text, and it's really great. But I've been using it for a lot of my talks now. Some of you know that I've been doing these talks on ballet, and I'm going back to musical notes after the ballet one. So I'm trying to think of new musical pieces to focus on. But I was thinking actually of doing one about choral stuff and getting some of the big choral directors from around the U.S. or the world to actually come through and do like chats about these various pieces. Like, get like Ragnar and Dwayne Wolf from Colorado Symphony, chorus, and these major people that come through and talk about like Brahms Requiem, and actually go through the minutia of the details. Like the things that we do in rehearsal. Like oftentimes I'll have a certain viewpoint, but I mean, like a lot of people have different approaches to these things. If you noted that one of the pieces that we did, which was the Cantique de Jean Racine that we listened to. The tempo was really fast. No, it was a pavane. It was a pavane that was really fast. And that's actually the original tempo that Fauré wanted, but nobody does it. And so it was really great because that conductor sat through and did the research and said, you know what, Fauré actually wanted this really quite fast. It's a different feeling, you know? And so, you know, like these things, some of these tempi, some of the ways to approach these things are really, really different. And those different viewpoints, I think, are really instructive. You know, there was this guest conductor, and I forgot his name. It was San Francisco Symphony. And he was talking about one of the Beethoven symphonies. And he's like, you know, I think this thing, musical thing that everybody does is actually a misprint. I think he wrote it in the wrong place and he was sloppy and everybody thought it was brilliant, but he didn't mean to do it. And so he had all this rationale. It's like, but those are the things that everybody wants to listen to. Those are the things that make this really, right? That make it really fun. And so, as you know, I've been doing this one called ballet musical points, like points spelled like a.
So weird to hear my husband is the voice of God from Catherine Ashes.
And you know, the musical points are the ballet version of that, but before that we've been musical notes. But the musical notes had very little choral. We did Beethoven 9, but the parts that didn't have the chorus in it. And so I think it would be really fun to actually do some of the choral ones. Like, you know, for me, we talked about this when we did it, but the Dvorak Stabat Mater, right? I had known of the piece before, but I didn't know of his circumstances that in creating that. And you know, this is the one where it's the Dvorak's Stabat Mater is what it might feel like for Jesus's mother to see him die on the cross, right? And what ended up happening was Dvorak's three small kids, all died within the span of like 8 months, you know, and they were really young. And so he was devastated by this, but the Stabat Mater, you know, was his way of sort of tapping into these emotions and trying to, you know, make sense of everything. And when you hear about that and then you look at the music, you realize everything that he wrote in the music was out of that, right? You remember that the starts with an F sharp is just tremolo and no key. It's just this fading in and out of the single note, and it's just like, what is this, right? But if you know the background, it makes it really important. And so I think I'm you know, this pandemic has given me the time to do all the pet projects. So these are the some of the things, but we'll. I try to set them up on email, but I think I don't want to bother people with like weekly emails on this. Maybe I'll just put it in musical notes or whatnot. But if there are pieces that you're interested in exploring, I don't know if I'll throw something as heavy as the project. You know, it would be fun, for instance,
Voice of
to
God.
people really look at the Mozart Requiem to see what the real differences are, to understand where those are. You know, there is, and this is, let me see, this is the musical point one. If you're interested in that, but yeah, I don't know. That's my thing. So how's everybody else?
Okay, fine. Hey, we could take an informal poll. This is the first time we're doing this. We could all stay together as a group of about 75 at the moment, or we could split out into little rooms. We could take sort of a little poll who's on screen. You could decide whether you want to try it this way this week and we try it a different way next week, or how many people feel strongly that they would rather be in a smaller group to talk tonight. You could put your hand up if you feel that way, and we'll sort of take a very informal poll. If you would rather be in smaller rooms, we can do that. Not too many hands. So I think we're going to keep it as this whole group just for the moment. And if you feel strongly the other way, send some emails around, and we'll try and accommodate next week.
I just want to welcome everyone who's joined us who's not a regular BCCO member. It's so great that you're here with us. It really makes it exciting for us. So thank you. And it's so great to have Nadine back. Oh my gosh.
Thank you, Jan. I appreciate that. It's great to be back and listen to great Ming again and to have a lot of fun. I miss all my friends.
No.
I agree with Jan. Welcome everybody who's a guest here, and we're delighted to have you. I think there's well over 25. So,
Wow. As a guest, I'd like to say thank you very much for your hospitable welcome. It's been really interesting. It's been like a music lesson. I've lived a little bit in France and a little bit in Germany, and I have a better understanding of how their music expresses their like national personality. So it's been fascinating for me, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
I wish I could see all of the pages at once.
You know, there's a way. I don't know how. Zoom sent out this notification saying that you can have two pictures on the screen as a highlight at the same time. And I'm trying to figure out something possible that we can have the score and whatever is being shared at the same time, because then I would obviously excuse me, I'm replacing a chair bottom cover. That's why you're like in the basement. But I wonder if that's possible to do with a score, right? But it requires us actually finding a score that tracks the music, or somebody maintaining that, which can be hard.
Does anybody remember the last time we sang this? Am I the only one?
It was with Arlene.
I
remember. When was it?
2005 or something?
2009.
I
remember, Mary.
We had a very nice ghostly presence because we sang in the old church, and
St. Joe's. Yeah,
it felt good to be singing that in the church.
It was a long time. Yeah,
a long time ago.
Maybe that's why I couldn't find the score.
I couldn't find mine either.
I had 20 other scores, but I couldn't find this one.
I found it.
I had to download it.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I'm gonna take off, you guys. I have to eat dinner. I'm starving. But
Yes, I'm gonna go.
great.
Okay, everybody.
Bye-bye,
Nice to see everybody.
Bye.
See you next
Ciao. Thank you.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye. Good to see you all.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Hey, Joanne, it's great to see you.
Oh, thank you.
Wow, that was like a mass.
Yeah.
That was a quick exodus.
It's like birds.
It's like leaves falling off a tree.
Actually, Christian, when the altos do it, we do break into groups, and it's easier.
I think it's easier with breaking into
I think so too.
I think we'll give it a try, at least for a portion next week, and see what people think about it. That's a good idea.
And plus,
Are
if
you
it's
able to
randomly
put it by
assorted,
section?
we meet new people.
Yeah, I agree, Catherine.
Yeah, we can do it. Yeah, that would be the easiest way to administer it if it's random.
Yeah, no, definitely just make it random, and
Random is better.
you get to talk to whoever you get to talk to. It's kind of fun.
And if it's really atrocious, you can raise your hand and ask the admin to move you to a different room. There are ways to do it.
Oh, that'd be bad politics.
Oh man. So nice to see people's faces though. Joanne, I haven't seen you forever, so it's lovely to see your face.
I know I miss Joe Lieberling's memorial.
Oh yeah.
So sad.
Yeah.
I learned a lot in those few sessions that he had, let out in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, just been really busy with work. And sometimes I have a client all the way up until 7, almost 7. And then, I've got to walk the dog and feed myself. And so I miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the nice thing about Zoom is you can check in late and nobody will know.
This is true. This is true. Except I will know. Yep.
See you all next time.
Bye, Lynn.
Okay.
It is great to see so many faces.
It is.
Yeah.
Just great.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Bye. Nadine,
All
Lisa,
right.
Joanne.
All right, everyone.
Bye, Nadine. Bye. Bye, Mama. Bye,
Bye,
Mama.
bye, baby.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, the puppy.
Oh, the puppy. Yeah.